Hi, I'm Marco D'Angelo, and this is the continuing How to Handicap series from pregame.com. Today, we're going to take a look at how to handicap conference tournaments. Many people believe that March Madness, the NCAA tournament, is the most exciting and the most profitable time. Me personally, I like conference tournament week. It presents unique handicapping situations that you don't have any other time during the basketball season. Many of these games will feature teams that are playing for the second and sometimes third time during the season. This creates great handicapping possibilities for us as we get to break down those first meetings. When you look at the first meetings with teams in the conference tournaments, you can look back at the season and see what was going on during that stretch. Was the team playing well when they played this team last time? Were they coming off a big game? Did they have a big look-ahead revenge game or a TV game? These are all things that factor in to the outcomes of those first meetings. Was somebody hurt? Was there one-sided foul calling by the referees? These are pure handicapping things that you don't get once you get into the NCAA tournament. One of the reasons I like conference tournament week so well. Also, you have teams that hit the conference tournament week when they're coming off big games. They might have had a season-ending win over a highly ranked team on senior night, and they could come out flat in that first round of the tournament. These are different points that we will look at, and we're going to discuss all these situations in today's video. This is also the only time during the basketball season that college teams will be playing back-to-back days. Normally they're scheduled, they play twice a week during the regular season. But when you hit conference tournament week, they're going to play possibly, if they run the table, 4 days in a row to get to the championship game. What you get to look at with this is different styles of how the games went the night before. You get to watch all of these games and see, did a team have an easy win? Did they clear out their bench and keep the players fresh for the next night? Were they in a dogfight right down to the wire? Did they have to come from behind and spend a lot of energy playing defense to get back into the ball game? These are all angles that you get to use during conference tournament week. I like to look at these teams and analyze the game before, and it helps me to look at what's going to happen in the next game. I love to look at teams that had a struggle the night before and just barely won, especially if they were a big favorite. This generally is a wake-up call to these teams. When they have a scare as a favorite and then play the next night, you can be sure they're going to be ready, primed, and focused for their best effort. And you get the benefit of value in the line because Vegas is going to adjust the line off of the previous night's poor performance. Also, whenever you get to conference tournament week, you've got a unique situation with the higher seeds in the tournaments. Many of these conferences give their top seeds byes in the first round. This presents a handicapping challenge for the bettor. When they go to the second game, do you take the rested team that had the bye, or do you take the team that played the night before? Personally, I think the advantage lies with the team that played the night before. The teams that played the day before got a game under their belt. They're not rusty. They haven't sat around for 4 or 5 days since their last game. But more importantly, they got the butterflies out of their system. It doesn't matter if these are big name schools or not. When you play the conference tournament and say like in the Big East tournament you're playing at Madison Square Garden, these kids are nervous. It's a bigger stage than they've played during the regular season. The teams that played the night before have momentum. They're crisp, they're sharp. They played the night before, so the jitters are gone. And generally, when they move into that second game the next night, they're getting some extra line value from the Vegas odd makers because they look at it as the team that played the night before is at a disadvantage. And generally, I feel there's 1 to 2 points of value playing the teams that played the night before versus the teams that had the bye. Also, when we get to conference tournament week, you're going to hear the phrase a lot, bubble teams. Bubble teams, the last week of the regular season and into the conference tournaments, are teams that are just that, hanging on the bubble, need another win or two to ensure their invitation to the big dance. this presents some great betting opportunities. All of the major networks, ESPN, CBS, they're all going to be talking about these bubble teams. It's all over the internet and on the TV, on radio talk shows. So everybody knows what teams need to get the wins. Vegas knows that too. And generally speaking, Vegas is going to put a premium on these teams that are the so-called bubble teams. I think many times there's great value fading the bubble teams, and here's why. You've got a team that's now in a must-win situation. Just like we talk about in football and other sports, teams in must-win situations generally play tighter. They so many times will play not to lose instead of playing to win. This creates great value when you're betting the underdog for two reasons. One, you're getting an inflated line because Vegas has pumped the line on the favorite because they are in that must-win situation. And if you got a team that's playing tight, this sets up for you to cover with that inflated line because these teams are not going to take as many chances, play it close to the vest, and you can get the dog, stay in these games. Also, a lot of times in these conference tournaments, there are teams that aren't bubble teams, and the only way that they're going to make the tournament is to win the conference tournament. That's going to create some very live dog situations. Speaking of dogs, I always feel that during conference tournament week, you should be looking at the dog first when you're handicapping a game. When you sit down to start handicapping any game, it's always a good practice to look at the dog first. See if the dog is worth a play. You got to have solid reasons before you flip over to the favorite. One general principle, and it sounds very corny, but it is so true. When you bet an underdog in any sport, with a point spread, I should say, there's three things that can happen. Two of them are favorable for the underdog. The underdog can win the game outright, you cash a winning ticket. The underdog can lose, but you cover with the points and cash the ticket. And then the third result that can happen, which is the only negative one for the underdog, is the favorite wins in a rout and covers the spread. So if you got a 2 out of 3 chance with every wager, every time you take an underdog, it's always a good practice to look at the underdog first. And that's what Vegas wise guys do. Guys that are betting big money always look to the underdogs first. Also remember with betting underdogs in the conference tournament that a lot of these big name teams are kind of just free-willing. They're already in the big dance. Doesn't matter what happens in the NCAA tournament or the conference tournament. Whether they win the conference title or not, they're still going to go to March Madness. These teams sometimes play lackluster in the early rounds. So it's a good possibility that with these underdogs, you're going to get inflated lines because of the big name status. Now, as we get to the later round of the conference tournament in the championship game, then the favorites generally do come to play because when you do make it to the championship game, you're here, you might as well get the job done. But in those early rounds, a lot of times you can see teams just lackluster performances in the first or second game. Also, because it is tournament time and these teams get a big lead, they are more apt to clear their benches earlier than they would do during a regular season game because they got to come back and play the next night. So the coach will want to substitute more freely to keep his team fresh for the next game the following night. This many times will lead to a backdoor cover with the underdogs. These are several tips that I like to use whenever I'm handicapping conference tournament week. I hope you can use some of these to help you in your handicapping. And as always, best of luck with all of your wagers. This is Marco D'Angelo for the continuing How to Handicap series from pregame.com. We'll see you down the road with more handicapping tips. And as always, best of luck.